Ladies and gentlemen, it's safe to say that countertop ovens have come a long way over the past decade. They've gone from low-tech horizontal toasters to digital multi-appliance replacements. And this Instant Omni Plus is a great example of that. I'm really excited to get my hands on it because it seems like the perfect complement to my style of cooking, lazy. It's a combination countertop oven, air fryer, and rotisserie, plus it's smart, with 10 pre-programmed cooking modes to take some of the guesswork out of the kitchen. In this review, we're going to run over operation, verify temperature accuracy with some calibrated instruments and the thermal camera, try out some of the fancier cooking modes, check out the build quality, and then finally make some conclusions. But let's start by taking a look inside the box. Included with our purchase is a drip tray, the rotisserie forks, the air fry basket, a general purpose wire rack, and of course the very nicely presented Omni Plus itself. I think the manufacturer did a really nice job overall with this product's design. It's a really tasteful combination of gloss black and brushed stainless steel. It should go well in most kitchens. Before actually using the Omni, the instructions recommend running it at 400 degrees for 20 minutes as a sort of break-in period. But here's an insider tip. Do this outside, or at least in the garage, as whatever manufacturing goo is burning off has some serious stinkage to it. Alright guys, I wanted to give you a quick menu demonstration for the Instant Omni Plus. One of the first things you'll notice when you get this set up is really what a nice display it has. Everything is big, bright, super easy to use. The temperature can be controlled via touch here. If you rotate it fast, it goes in 5-degree increments. If you rotate it slow, it goes in single-degree increments. Same thing over here with the time. Touch that and you can adjust that quickly or fast. You have all your modes down here: air fry, roast, broil, bake, warm, reheat, toast, and dehydrate. Basically, I mapped out what the difference between each of those is. I'll throw that up on the screen on a screenshot or on a spreadsheet if you want to take a close look at that. Basically, the different modes here just sort of dictate what goes on inside of the unit, whether it's the upper elements that are on, the lower elements, both, the heating coil, the fan, the rotisserie rotate. So all of those things are sort of set depending on which mode it's in. You have a light button right here. It just momentarily turns on the internal light there. Unfortunately, there's not a way to kind of permanently turn it on. It usually just has a 5 or 10 second timeout, and if you were curious to have it on longer than that, you kind of just have to keep hitting that button. But overall, the menu and display on the Instant Omni Plus is really one of its standout features. They did a great job with it. Above all else, I was most excited to try out this product's rotisserie function. One thing to keep in mind though is that we're not working with a very big space. Instant recommends a max weight of 4 pounds, and that seems to be pretty accurate. Here I've got a 3.9 pound bird. Despite being technically within our weight limit, I had to wrap it up pretty tightly with some string to keep the wings from hitting the lower heating elements. Speaking of which, you'll notice that I've got some foil covering them. That's because when the rotisserie function is selected, the lower elements do not turn on, and I was trying to keep them clean. Otherwise, making a rotisserie chicken in the Omni Plus is super easy. I set the temp to 400 degrees and the timer to 55 minutes. From there, I just had to sit back, play some vids, and let the oven do the work of making dinner. Some online roasting tutorials mention that balance is often a concern. However, I did not make any effort other than ballparking the middle of the chicken and then skewering. Despite being obviously heavier on one side, the Omni Plus's motor appears to have enough torque to keep it rotating smoothly, so we're all good in that department. And a little over an hour later, we have our freshly roasted poultry that was only slightly overcooked. I'm thinking next time I'll lower the temp by about 10 degrees. Now, one of the biggest concerns any would-be chef has is an appliance's ability to maintain an even, consistent temperature. The last thing we want is a dish that's well done on one side, yet not so done on the other. Here, I have a calibrated thermocouple set up on the far left side of the oven. In this test, we're looking to see if the temp on the left matches the temp on the right, as well as verifying the actual temperature matches what the oven says it is. Unfortunately, despite being set at 300 degrees and being given ample preheat time, we're reading temperatures that fluctuate between 260 and 280 degrees. This translates into an actual temperature that's between 6 and 13% lower than what the oven says it should be. However, there is a good side to this story, and that's the fact that readings were relatively consistent side to side. This means that although the built-in thermometer is not particularly accurate, internally, at least the heat is even. To further verify this, I'm going to employ the thermal camera that's sensitive to 0.07 degrees Celsius. With this, we'll be able to see if there are any hot or cold spots we need to be aware of. We'll let this piece of cedar, used to plank salmon, sit for about 15 minutes and then take a look. And I think this is exactly what we want to see, even heat side to side. Like I mentioned, this is a very sensitive camera, so any temperature differences would be really obvious. We do, however, see two hot spots here and here, but they're nothing to worry about. They're dark colored knots in the wood, so it's to be expected they would absorb a little more heat. Next up is a little air frying action. I've never done this before, but am really happy to have the ability to make a slightly healthier version of unhealthy food at home. First, some frozen fries. Per instance instructions, the proper settings are 400 degrees for 15 minutes. And here they are frying away. You do tend to hear a slight sizzling sound when things get going, but not near as much as you would hear if it were an actual deep fryer. After our 15 minutes is up, we can see that the appliance did a really nice job. They're slightly browned, yet still kind of soft on the inside. Of course, the important part is the taste test. Both my dog and I agree, there's very little difference between these and actual deep fried fries. Maybe slightly drier, but I couldn't imagine getting any closer without employing the real thing. Now, because the Omni Plus has an apparently endless supply of tricks, we're going to try another, using its food dehydrator function. Here, the girlfriend has cut up some garden tomatoes and we're going to turn them into the sun-dried variety. Not personally knowing much about the process, I decided to just leave the default settings as is and press start. Over the next 8 hours, they transformed from plump, juicy cherry tomatoes into little shriveled versions of their prior selves. Mission accomplished. Of course, no review of a toaster oven would be complete without a little, toasting action. Here, I've got one of my on-the-go staples, the frozen waffle. I place them in, press the auto toast setting, and let the machine do the work. 3 minutes and 55 seconds later, they were toasted to perfection. The final thing I want to talk about before closing out this video is this machine's amperage requirements. I think it's important because it's something a lot of people don't consider but maybe should. The Omni Plus consumes just shy of 14 amps. That is actually quite a bit. Newer homes are built with multiple 20 amp circuits supplying the kitchen, so this won't cause any problems. However, some older homes might be using 15 amp branches, and this product, while still probably okay if used alone, might trip a breaker if used on a shared circuit. Okay, so overall, what do we think of the Instant Omni Plus? Well, it's a fantastic product that deserves its current 5-star rating. It looks nice, is super easy to use, and has a ton of functionality above and beyond a basic toaster oven. I especially love the big, bright touchscreen display. However, there are 3 items that I think could use some improvement. The first is temperature accuracy. We found earlier that it's off by about 10% on average. To me, that is quite a bit. I would expect better from a digitally controlled device. Then there's build quality. It's not amazing. Both the crumb tray and door feel kinda flimsy. Not terrible, just not great. And lastly, I do wish there were some sort of guard over these lower elements. As is, they're completely unprotected, so I envision food bits landing on them in the future and making something of a mess. Hopefully I didn't get too nitpicky with these final concerns. Like I said, overall it's a fantastic product and I would highly recommend it.